Part 2, Graphing.
Section A, the graph itself.
A graph is a grid that is divided into little square sections. It looks a lot like a waffle, but we don't usually put syrup on it.
We usually put two intersecting lines on a graph. One line is horizontal, like the form your body would take if you levitated out of bed. And the other is vertical, like your body would look if you were standing up and you stretched your arms way above your head. The horizontal line is called the x-axis, and the vertical line is called the y-axis. These axes are like two number lines that cross at their 0 point.
The coordinates are like our map. They tell us how far right or left we have to go on the x-axis and how far up or down on the y-axis. So, each point on a graph has a set of coordinates. We say that a point has an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. The coordinates are written like this, in parentheses, with the x-coordinate first and then the y-coordinate.
So, if we had the coordinates of a given point that were 4 on the x-axis and 7 on the y-axis, we'd write them like this. Likewise, if we had 2 on the x-axis and 6 on the y-axis, we'd write them like this.
You might notice that these look like the intervals we were dealing with in the number line section. But don't worry, we can tell which one we're talking about by the context we're in. If we're talking number lines, then we're talking intervals. But if we're talking graphs, then we're talking coordinates. And if we're not talking at all, you may want to get your ears checked.
Hello?
So if we see the coordinates 2 and 6, our first step is to go to the center point of the graph. Notice Greta Guppy at the center point. We say that Greta is at the origin of the graph. The coordinates of the origin are 0, 0. So Greta, the graphing Guppy, always starts at the origin, then follows her coordinates. In this case, she swims over 2 places to the right on the x-axis. Next, Greta jumps up 6 places on the y-axis. Over and up. This is where Greta leaves her mark.
See how Greta made her mark in the top right section? This section is called quadrant 1. On a graph, the x and y axes intersect to create 4 sections. These sections are called quadrants.
Notice this squash. When it's in the top right corner of our graph, it's in quadrant 1. When our squash is directly to the left of that, it's in quadrant 2. When our yummy squash is directly below that, it's in quadrant 3. And when it's to the right of quadrant 3, everybody's favorite squash is in quadrant 4. Starting with the top right corner, the numbers of the quadrants follow in counterclockwise fashion. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, a graph is divided into 4 sections because there are 4 different combinations that coordinates can come in. So far we've only dealt with quadrant 1 because all our numbers have been positive.
If Greta Guppy is moving to the right on the x-axis or moving up on the y-axis, then Greta's got positive values.
But notice here, Greta Guppy is hanging out in the negative numbers to the left and bottom of our graph. This means when Greta's moving to the left or bottom, Greta's feeling a little down in the land of negative values.
So we can have points anywhere on the graph. The key to figuring out where our points should go is paying attention to the signs of our coordinates.
When our x-coordinate is positive and our y-coordinate is also positive, our point will be in the first quadrant. If we've got a negative x and a positive y-coordinate, then our point will be in quadrant 2. Points with a negative x and a negative y will be in quadrant 3. And if we've got a positive x and a negative y, our point is going to be in the 4th quadrant.
Okay, now that we know how the quadrant system works, let's try a couple examples to flaunt our skills. Say we want to plot the coordinates -3, +4.
Starting with a -3, Greta moves to the left 3 places on the x-axis because the numbers to the left of 0 are negative. Then Greta swims up 4 on the y because moving up puts her in the land of positive. So, she puts a point at -3, +4. Or, if we had the coordinates +6, -7, Greta goes 6 places to the right on the x and 7 places down on the y and makes her mark.